Shadowburn is one of the smartest Genji players in the world, and one of the main factors that elevate him above the rest is his Dragon Blade usage. There is not a single time that he pulls it out that goes to waste, and the secret for that is his patience. He only ults when it's absolutely essential. So, let's break down why and how this ex-Overwatch League pro plays like this. Whenever you want to blade, there are a number of factors that you should be thinking about. The objective, the fight status, the resources, but let's go one step at a time. First, the objective. Let's say that you just won a fight on payload and you have Dragon Blade ready. Your team is pushing the payload and you move up to the enemy spawn and blade them there. Is that a good blade? Absolutely not. That is just wasted. But why is it wasted? Well, it's because the objective is just moving for free. Ideally, you let the objective move as much as possible before the enemy contests, and once the enemy contests, then you might think about blading the enemy team. But you might not even need to blade at that point. You also have to consider the fight status. Because if your team is just winning that fight, then why blade? And if your team is hard losing the fight, then blade probably doesn't turn the fight around. So those are two very important factors that you have to consider that lead to this right here. The value of the blade. How valuable is a blade when your team is just winning? How valuable is a blade when your team is gonna get that card push for free? How valuable would be a blade clutch in a 1v5 scenario? Let's say that this is your effectiveness throughout a fight, and the ups are gonna be when you have cooldowns, you're engaged with the enemy team, you're doing a lot, and then the downs are when you have downtime, you are resetting, so you have to wait for your cooldowns, maybe you have to flank again to look for a play or something like that. Blade is gonna do this. It's gonna make your power level spike, and you want to be doing this spike on the hardest points to push. So, if you're playing payload and you just kept an objective, it's probably not great to blade on the next fight. Because even though it might win you the fight, that fight might actually just be easy because the payload is closer to your side and further away from the enemy. The enemy team might not even want to hold in that position. So if they do, you should just try to win it without blading. Ideally, you save it for the hardest fight, which is usually gonna be the fight that lets you cap a point in payload, right? But you're not gonna be able to always maximize the theoretical value of blade. Sometimes you're gonna be forced to do a suboptimal blade, or a blade that does get good value, but it would have been even greater if you could wait for the next fight. That's not the worst thing in the world, but you should at least aim to get higher value with blade if possible, and only blade if forced to do so. So in this case, maybe you are at the middle point of a payload push, and you're fighting, but the fight seems to start to go in the enemy's favor. Then maybe you use the blades to pick up the tempo and actually guarantee that fight win instead of losing and then wasting 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds to respawn, walk back, trade cooldowns to gain a little bit of space and then have a meaningful fight. So those are things that you have to weigh in order to decide if the blade is worth it or not. Instead of just being like, I have blade available, let me blade, and let's not consider if blade is actually good here or not. But alrighty, enough with the theoreticals about when you should be blading, how should you blade? And that's when the resource part comes in. Because it's not just, oh, okay, this is the area of the map, like the perfect situation. This is the hardest part of this payload push to break through, so this is where my power spike is gonna be the most useful. So I'm just gonna go in there and blade the moment that the payload reaches that position. No, it's not that simple. Because you have things to outplay, you have to consider the enemy positions and especially the resources that they have, as well as your own resources, not just the enemy outplaying you, it's also your teammates helping you. So ideally, you are not the first to engage. Your teammates engage and bait some cooldowns, bait attention from the enemy team, even bait ultimates, and then you can come in later once they have less of those resources, so that you can clean up and actually get a lot done instead of being the one engaging, having to outplay every single cooldown in existence and then complaining that your character is trash when actually you just played very, very badly. So, let's see this in action. 2 minutes and 30 into this match, I farmed my first blade. But I don't really need to blade here. I already got a pick. My team is walking point and stopping it, the enemy team is giving up space, so why would I blade? I'm just gonna wait until I'm actually in a good situation to actually use that power spike. Right now I still don't need it. Enemy team is kiting, sure the Larry is ulting, but we're fine. I can just mark the Tracer here, the ball isn't really doing much in the backline. My Ramatra is pushing the enemy team with ult, so I can just hold my blade. Using it here would just be a waste, and then I wouldn't have it when I actually really needed it, right? As you can see, we're just slowly winning the fight to get the point back. Now we're gonna be taking the lead, hopefully. And I still have my blade available for the hardest part, which is probably gonna be close to the checkpoint once the enemy team recontests with ultimates. And here I could do a rollout blade over the roof, but I don't see the need to, because it's only Ball and Tracer in, while we have 3 players to deal with them. Ramatra is holding the enemy backline hostage essentially, so they don't really have much to actually threaten us at all. So there's stalling point a bit, but it's like, it doesn't really do much. I can just AFK here, wait for these squishes to walk up, and if they don't, then they're not taking part of the fight, so we just get the cap for free, and I'm still holding blade. I'm holding blade for 1.5 minutes now, and I still haven't ulted, and that is not a bad thing. Now here I'm marking the Tracer, trying to get more free payload push. Unfortunately the soldier flanked and shot a rocket at me, so that's why I got bursted, but still, the enemy team is kind of staggering here. The Ball and the Tracer are not coordinating properly, the backline isn't really being able to play because of the Ramatra, so we're still just pushing the payload for free essentially, so I don't have to blade, I don't have to force a play like that. I can just keep my resource for when it is actually important, when it's actually essential. Here my Ramatra fed, and Ball is engaging. This might be a situation where I might want to blade, but I feel like right now the enemy team is too far for me to blade, so I'm not looking for it. Now I'm gonna be looking for a flank on the backline, seeing if I can do something, but I really don't think I'm gonna be able to do anything there. Ramatra is almost back, and my Brig got a pick on the soldier. So again, I don't need to blade. We're pushing the payload for free, the enemy team isn't really being able to do much. I can just contest the backline, and then Ball gets support on the front line. Ball is gonna get forced out of the point soon, and we should get more payload push. They're ulting. I could think about blading here, but let's think about the resources. Can I blade here? Can I blade in 1v3 in the enemy backline with a 3-up? Probably not, so I'm just gonna be waiting here in this position, waiting to go on the backline. Now I'm pressuring Sojourn, and once Sojourn uses the slide, I feel like this is a mistake. I should not have bladed. It's okay resource-wise because the Sojourn wouldn't have the mobility, but I ended up forgetting about life grip in that. I didn't think about every single resource that I had. But I did have a generally good approach for the blade. If I didn't dash and waited for the life grip to go off and then chase them, then I could probably get value out of that blade. But I could potentially have waited a little bit longer for the bots to push a little bit further and only then use the blade. And as you can see, I spent half the match without blading essentially, and the blade that I used wasn't even good. So it's funny, isn't it? Like you have this power spike, but because of all the circumstances, there is just no need to do it. And the moment that I did it, because I felt like I didn't want to wait any longer, it was bad. I should have waited even longer, right? So we need to stop thinking about I farm blade, I need to ult. Holding blade for a long time is bad. No, holding blade is a good thing if there's no reason to blade at all, if there's no situation for it. Shouldn't try to force it and then end up feeding. So let's skip ahead for when we have blade again. Here I have blade again. When do I finish farming it? I just finished farming it, 1 minute 33, 34, it doesn't really matter. And you're gonna see that again, I'm gonna be holding blade for a long time. Here, my team is just pushing payload for free, Ball is stalling point for a bit, my Ashe gets dove and dies, I'm marking Tracer, hopefully we get the res off. I'm low, so my backline helps me out. And again, maybe I could think about blading this because we're in a 4v5, but I have to be careful about the cooldowns. The positioning for the enemy team weren't great up until now. Now might be a good position for me to blade, but I still don't feel like I should, and I don't feel like I need. Even though we're down 2, I can just stall payload a lot, and we can easily kite this position. Maybe Brig can't, but at least I can easily kite this. Could look for a blade here, but again, patience. I don't necessarily need to blade, I can probably wait a little longer, I'm just wasting their time, and since my team is popping out and getting kills, I again get to hold blade, because if I try to force a blade there, I would probably not get value. And this is not a blade situation, but I didn't even need to take that risk on the Illari. I could have just chilled. She was out, my team is pre-pushing payload, so that is just an unnecessary risk. Just like my previous blade, right, the only blade so far in this match, ended up being a waste. Because I just didn't need to do it. So why do it? Why take the risk? You know? So yeah. Now my entire team is dead, so I'm just gonna be kiting with Mercy, and it's overtime, and I haven't used the second blade yet. So here, just marking ball, helping my Mercy if possible, and if we win the fight, then we're gonna be winning the game. If the enemy team wins the fight, they probably win because of how close the objective is to capping for them. And now I look for a blade angle. We need to recontest, so we have worse space than them, and they have a tree. So even though this feels desperate and that I should be blading, I don't feel like I need to rush this. If I rush the blade, I'm pushing into enemy territory, I'm pushing into a bunch of cooldowns, I'm probably gonna get rolled. So I'm just being patient, and now this is my trigger. The tree is over, the Illari used her mobility cooldown, so that allows me to engage on her and actually get a quick pick off. Then I have this time the dash available to chase the Life Weaver. I didn't forget about the cooldowns, and even though it felt desperate, it's overtime, the point is close to capping for the enemy team, they might have an ultimate advantage over us and a space advantage over us, and my other DPS ended up dying early. I just didn't take that risk. I just waited because I knew that if I bladed, I would probably end up feeding. So I just waited patiently, and then once finally the situation arose, I was able to blade because I had it available, and then I was able to clutch the game. Because realistically, even though we were theoretically on a disadvantage over there, it wasn't really a disadvantage because our team was just pretty chill on the corner. My Ramatra can anchor point for a long time if we need to, with double support pockets. We had Valk for that too, so I felt like it was actually fine to wait, even though it felt like it was bad. And the worst thing that could happen is actually me pushing into enemy territory instead of waiting for them to push into our territory, right? Because that is a big difference. In one of them, you have worse risk to reward, and in the other one, you have better risk to reward. Essentially, you want the enemy to try to commit into you instead of you being the one committing into them, right? And since we were in the defense there, we can afford to be the ones waiting for the enemy team to walk into us for them to commit, instead of us being the ones pushing into the enemy team and committing and them being on safer positions. If you have any questions, please do let me know in the comments, and if you want more analysis on Shadowburn, I'm gonna be leaving a link in the description for your Overwatch's analysis of his playstyle essentially, which I think is a really good video. Bye bye!